All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another week of MMFM Digital. The Miami Media and Film Market welcomes you to another one-on-one conversation. This week, we're bringing in our very good friend and guest, a longtime MMFM alumni who has contributed so much to our industry, to our conference, and to the community here and Hollywood at large. It's our good friend, JD Freitas, and I'm so happy that he's joining us here today. On behalf of the Miami Media and Film Market, Kamakol, my partner Patty Arias, who I'm sure is tuning in as well to listen into this chat. A lot going on in the industry. We're trying to get into sort of recovery mode now. There's talks about Hollywood going back into production on June 12th. Although the state wants it to happen, they're kicking it down to the county to see whether or not it can happen, how. Miami has its own set of issues as well. But we're trying everything we can to get motion picture production back in full effect the way it was in what I call BC, or before Corona, which now feels like a lifetime ago, even though it was actually February. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my guest for today, JD. JD, can you hear me?
Hey,
How are you, man?
good, and you?
I'm good. So we are live now on Facebook for MMFM Digital, and I just want to thank you again for being our guest today.
No problem. Always, whenever you guys need anything, and appreciate the platform.
Yeah, man. So how have you been holding up the past couple months?
Pretty great, to be honest. It's, when you're in quarantine, you got to get into a routine, in my opinion. So I've been staying to a pretty strict routine. And, when you work from home, I think you got to treat it like an office. So, I'm militant about it. Like from working out to walking my dog to when I got to read scripts, I'll read scripts in the living room. And then when I'm done with script reading time, it's like, all right, now to the dining room to do the grind work. Like I almost break off my day into certain like little areas. Yeah, I don't work in sweatpants either. I put jeans on and a shirt on and shoes on, like, because it's funny. I'll get on these Zoom calls with people in the industry, and like some people have taken so much advantage of it. They're like, they're in tees and pajamas and shit, which is fine because that's kind of
Right.
like the perk of working from the house. But for me, I'm just like I treat it like still office hours.
Yeah, business as usual.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we've been hearing from a lot of industry folks over the weeks, and they're actually saying they've been able to actually be more productive from home than when they have to go into their studio or their sort of regular office. Just because, like you said, they can kind of focus more, they can set their own schedules, and they can get a lot more done a lot quicker. So it's
Yeah, to be honest, I phased out my office about a year and a half ago, and I
mm,
started working from home. One, because there was a lot of production and things going on. I was just shooting a lot. And two, I found myself working from home so much more because at least, in this game, you're either in production heavy and not in the office, or you're deep in development, which involves reading and watching things. And I just, I even had a screening room and an editing room and everything in my office, but I just kept on finding myself wanting to do it from home.
right.
And yeah, I was living in New York at the time when I phased my office out and my assistant. And I was just like, I want to just do it from home because I do it faster, quicker. I'm in my own world. So I haven't had an office
Hmm,
in over a year.
right.
So to be honest, when this quarantine came about, it was business as usual for me.
That's awesome. And obviously, another thing a lot of folks have been saying is, obviously, like you said, this is a great time to read scripts, to develop new material. Have you been getting a lot of development work done the past couple months?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I haven't been getting any more work done because you know me, Jose. I'm like, I'm an assassin with my stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's really been is it's a lot easier to get people on the phone and get people to read your stuff from my
Hmm,
perspective, right?
right.
I
Sure.
mean, I would argue even people maybe some stuff that I've been kind of like on my list of stuff to read that I haven't paid attention to. Um, Hold on, my dog's barking.
Oh, is that Frankie?
Yeah, it is. 1 second.
No worries. All right, so we're taking a little pause while JD takes care of Frankie. But yeah, this has definitely been an interesting time, and we're so happy again that you guys are able to join us here on this
Hey,
session.
so sorry about that. That's
Oh,
so embarrassing.
no
I actually
worries, brother.
there was a delivery, which is why my dog was,
Ah,
going crazy.
okay.
My apologies. But back to what we were saying. Yeah, like it's now things are opening, but for the past 2.5 months, when there's an executive that you want to read something or you want to get on the phone, it's kind of comforting to know that we're all at home.
Hmm,
It's very evident that everyone's at home.
right.
So I've been able to get people on the phone a lot faster. I've been able to get people to read a lot quicker. Certainly, it's been amazing for development in that sense. And I mean, though, I just had a little bit of momentum going into the pandemic. That there was a few things I had been working on for a while that just kind of happened to fall into place, like in the first couple of weeks. So a bunch of stuff, but like it just all kind of came together. So I've been fortunate in that sense that a couple of the things that I've been working on kind of finally closed and hit and just moved into action. So I've been busy, extremely busy, not like more than even more than before the pandemic.
Sure. Yeah, and last time we left off, we had done this sort of epic two-part podcast with you, and we talked a lot about your journey in particular with the corporation. How's that coming along?
It's going great, man. We script is fire. Um, it's moving. I can't really get deep into it because there's
Hmm.
a couple things I'm not really at liberty to discuss. But the script is fire. The whole team's happy with it. My partners are happy away. The picture company, LBI, everyone's loves the script, and there's a couple dominoes that are gonna fall soon that I think people will hear about, and it's gonna you know kick it into action. But me, I like to be very detailed, but I actually
Right.
can't be that detailed at the moment.
Obviously, and obviously the other project that a lot of us saw last year at the Miami Film Festival, Vandal. That was such a great film. And now it's an interesting time because, like I said, production has been halted for the past 3 months. So it seems like a lot of folks are kind of starved for content, but unfortunately the theatrical side of it has kind of fallen by the wayside. So any updates on what's going on with Vandal?
It's kind of like the same thing as the corporation. There's well, to be so real, we got a lot of offers on Vandal, good ones, like
Hmm.
of the companies. But quite frankly, we didn't move forward with them. They weren't right for us. They were just whether it was a lot of exposure and not enough money, or a lot of money and not enough exposure. And it was just like we didn't find that balance that we wanted
Right.
of the right deal. It's like we feel like the movie's a Ferrari, so it's like we treat it like that. You're not gonna get rid of your Ferrari if it doesn't make sense.
Oh, right. Especially,
Financial.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially
So
not in Miami. We're into cars.
yeah, exactly. So we were just holding a beat because Danny is on this show Penny Dreadful, and we wanted to
Hmm.
kind of see what happens with that show, and the show's been a
Sure.
success. And also the pandemic once again kind of helped us. So we're in talks with a pretty large streamer that it wants the movie. So once again, I can't really talk about details, but I can say that if it works out, it'll Vandal will get out there in a very, very big way, which is super exciting because wow, it's just like when you put so much into a film, you can't wait for people to see it, and
No,
it's
of
it's
course.
taken a while. But
Yeah.
as indie film works, sometimes it's really fast and sometimes it's really slow.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're totally right. And but it seems in general now it's kind of shifting to a seller's market because again, production has slowed down. There's so many streamers that are coming into the fold now. HBO Max just launched. Obviously, you have Netflix, you have Hulu, Disney Plus, and they're all kind of battling for the same eyeballs without, unfortunately, the pipeline of content that they're used to having in terms of production. So it seems like anyone that had anything in the can before Corona has a better shot of getting a better deal, at least in the next few months.
For sure. I mean, I don't know about maybe Yeah, actually, I have. My agent was telling me that that certain places are paying more for certain things that they wouldn't have before. And I think, yeah, it's like a pipeline question, right? Like, it's like at some point, like everyone's probably good for like, the next quarter or two. It's more like quarter three because that's when production stopped. What's going to happen then,
Right. Right.
Um, it's like a scheduling issue, but yeah, it's weird because I've heard a lot of things. Netflix isn't in a buying spree really. Like they're not. They've been stocked up, and I've
Mm.
had a few agents and a few people tell us you'd think Netflix is going on a buying spree. They're actually not.
Right.
They're actually holding a beat right now because of what's going on with the pandemic. Not to say that they're not buying at all,
Right.
but I wouldn't say like abnormal buying habit from Netflix.
Right. I mean,
Now there's other
that's
places that are.
right, because
They're
I think that the issue with Netflix is that they're so far ahead in terms of volume of content of all the other streamers, and I think that sort of the catch up or maybe the buying spree would come from some of the newer players that are entering that space right now, as opposed to Netflix, which is sort of the dominant force in streaming, right?
For sure, for sure. I mean, look, there's Netflix is, they're on top of the game. They know what they're doing, and they've been buying and stocking up for a while. I think everyone else is certainly just playing catch up to them, and they will. I mean, Disney Plus is, I mean, wow, they've skyrocketed in viewership. That's impressive. Like they're on their way, big time.
Yeah, yeah, and it seems like obviously, to always talk about silver linings, I guess the pandemic has helped a lot of the newer streamers like Disney because, folks are sitting around their home with nothing to do except watch content and just kind of hang around the house. So those subscription numbers have jumped even for some of the newer players, and even Disney, like it's such an established brand in general. But I think if you look back to November when they launched to now, they never thought that their streaming platform would be as important to their business model as it is now. We're being from Florida, the theme parks are still closed. And so this is really their only revenue source right now.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that the absolute worst thing that could happen to theater owners and distributors and anything is that a pandemic would occur, a global pandemic that it's transmitted by like basically drop like breathing, that by talking, by being too close to each other, you
Right.
can get the disease. That is the worst case scenario for movie theaters. I mean, and also live sports, concerts. Those are the booming areas of a lot of entertainment. You know,
Yeah. No,
and to
absolutely.
have that go away, that's it's the perfect storm for streamers and the straight up the death knell to theaters.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And they just posted, I guess, that AMC's may have a $2 billion loss just in the first quarter alone, right? And that's the
I
biggest
don't
one,
see how they survive.
right?
They'll need some sort of bailout. They were already struggling before this.
Yeah, and they're talking about debt restructuring and a lot of other things. So it's interesting that I think maybe, and I think that theatrical will survive in one form or another because I think ultimately, as we're now sort of hopefully coming out of this, folks kind of still enjoy that communal experience of watching something on a big screen in a group. And so, it may be sort of smaller screens or more sort of boutique theaters, the art houses and the ones that are kind of more high end that will survive this. But I think sort of the general multiplex that we kind of grew up on, that may be falling by the wayside, right?
Yeah, man, I love theaters.
Yeah.
I'm still that guy. I still go, and I still think there's certain movies that should be consumed in a theater. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna go away because if not, you can't make movies like Avengers profitable. You can't just rely on VOD. The
Right.
box office is a huge piece. You can't make a $250 million film and expect to turn out a billion if you don't have the theater component.
No.
You could
Right.
probably make your money back and a little bit more as well on VOD, but you ain't getting to a billion.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a different model altogether, and obviously, folks like Netflix who do spend big money on their originals. Obviously, The Irishman, which is a $180 million budget, which they could care less about the theatrical component, right? But they just kind of wanted the cachet, and so it becomes a numbers game in terms of you know if I invest $100+ million in this project, how many new subscribers, how many new eyeballs am I going to draw to my platform, right?
Of course, and I think that's why they did it at first. I don't think they'll keep doing it. I
Hmm.
think it's kind of like Netflix wanted to show, hey, we can make a Scorsese movie and we can do it big and loud. I mean, I don't know if you saw Apple just picked up Scorsese and DiCaprio's next movie, Killers of the
Yes,
Flower Moon.
I saw that. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
So that.
well, how about this? I don't subscribe to Apple Plus, but I will to watch that movie, so it worked.
Yeah, so you see that's I think that's exactly their point. So it's a different model than I think what we've ever seen before, and it is definitely changing the game in the industry in terms of, like you said, not only where is this film going to live, but how do we budget it? So is the idea then that the next Avengers, they may have to like rework the budgets and work that down to a more meaningful number if it's going to be straight to VOD, or if it's going to be a Disney Plus original versus a theatrical, and then kind of go into all the ancillary markets.
Yeah, or you just don't make it a movie. Make it a 7-part miniseries.
Right. Yeah. 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 Because I think in the world of subscribers, you're right. It's more the hours of content versus the actual one-offs itself that seems to be more valuable to the big streamers, right?
Absolutely, man. It's well to the streamers and I would say even audience. It's a lot of times you'll watch something if you know there's more to it. Just the movie in the form that it's in, I think is under siege in many ways.
Hmm. No, you're right. You're totally right. And obviously, look, just kind of going back to your work and your career, I know that you've hit the press with a couple of TV series ideas as well. So as a producer in today's world, before I used to be very much I'm a film producer, I'm a TV producer, I'm a film director, I'm a TV director. But now it's very fluid, right? So as a production company, as a filmmaker, as a producer, how do you kind of approach new content in terms of it, seeing it as a film versus a limited series? How does that kind of work in your world right now?
Right now, it depends in a sense that movies are really hard to make, like very challenging to make, and the more and more people I talk to are admitting those things as well. So it's like I guess you look at a lot of my stuff is based on true stories. So I look at the source material and I'm like, okay, what do we have here? Is this like, can this be a limited? Can this be an ongoing series, or is this just a movie? Obviously, as a producer, you always have that conversation, and you say, how can I make it? Who would make it? Who would fund it? If it's this or if it's that. I have a documentary feature right now that is going to get going, and the financiers, it was something that was brought to me, I guess, because they knew I was, it was just like a subject matter that was very interesting to me in Cuban. And the producers and the financiers, they came to me and they say, we see it as a movie. Like, no, like no series. And I actually agree. And they have the money and they want to fund it as a film. So awesome. A lot of the things that I have, man, there's not that many movies in my slate, to be honest, besides The Corporation and, oof, man, I don't even know. Everything is like either a series or a limited series.
Right.
I really don't have that many movies in my arsenal right now. I'm personally not envisioning things as movies anymore. Vandal, The Corporation, some things that have been in development for a long time, but new development, not a lot of movies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it seems like as far as where the market is right now, if you have, a chunk of certain hours of content, it is more valuable than a one-off film, right? Because then you have the idea for multiple seasons and things like that.
Absolutely, man. It's like I said, movies are they're a little not extinct, but not as advantageous, or maybe it's just the nature of the projects I'm developing
Right.
that they just don't play for films. That they're just, once we dig in, they're not anything that I would say is a film. So
Yeah. So in terms of where the industry is heading now, obviously there's been a lot of talk, and I think because of sort of the recent issues with representation, do you feel like the Hollywood and the industry is more open to diverse stories and multicultural than it was before, or is it still kind of playing the same old game? How much are you able to get ahead knowing that a lot of your content is sort of minority, Hispanic, Latino, even though it is mainly for the general market? But do you see Hollywood kind of open its doors and being more willing to tell diverse stories?
They better be, because the tide is changing, and quite, I've had conversations with colleagues of mine, Hispanic, African American, even a couple producers who are at the forefront, African American ones. And I think the attitude is, you better be willing to like, things are changing, and Hollywood has long been discriminatory, to say the least. And I just think the events that are happening in the world show that I think that door is that fence is falling. So I think Hollywood does a decent job of films that represent minorities. Decent, I wouldn't say that good. I would say Hispanics have it worse. When you look at the African American community, they have some juggernauts, like the Tyler Perry's, Oprah. There's Tim Story. I mean, there's just, like, I can go on and on of these people that just make amazing material. They know who they're making it for. Their audience comes out and supports them. They're successful. It's, in many ways, I'm not jealous, but I admire, how loyal the audience is and how good the creators are. It's just such a symbiotic relationship that works. In Hispanic entertainment, I don't know that we're there yet, to be honest. And I also think it has a lot to do with the executive ranks, the studios and the networks. They don't understand what we're trying to do yet, So not understand what we're trying to do, but how to get there.
Right.
It's a weird thing, but it'll happen. Look, Asians have had a hard time getting their material out, and then Crazy Rich Asians happens, and then Parasite happens, and then you're like, oh, that's right,
No, you're right. And I think it just takes one project to kind of break through to the mainstream. But I don't think it can sort of be a one-off, And our good friend Patty Harris is watching. Hi, Patty, who worked on, for example, Que Pasa USA back in the day. And that kind of broke through into the mainstream to the point that it got on the cover of TV Guide as one of America's best sitcoms. Not one of Hispanic America's best sitcoms, but just in general. And it seemed like there was a momentum in that direction, but then it just kind of died out again. So it almost comes in waves, right? So how do you kind of create a more sustainable movement where these kind of stories are a little bit more consistent? And like you said, maybe it's going back to the executive ranks and just continuously greenlighting these types of shows.
I mean, on my end, my whole slate is Hispanic or of minority. I don't have one project on my slate that isn't about an African American, about a Hispanic person, or about an Asian person. So, and companies like Macro, companies like Tripas, who I have friends that work at both of these companies, and they're making a lot of moves. Same thing as me. I mean, obviously different mandates, but that same idea of minority-driven content. There's other companies I'm not even mentioning. We're all out there. We're developing. We're selling. We're making. I think we need more Hispanics at the studios, at the networks, because it is a little frustrating to develop material with someone that doesn't get it. Like, sometimes you'll run into somebody that gets it. Luckily, I've been fortunate enough. My partners at Appian Way, Leonardo DiCaprio's production company, and the Picture Company, and even David Ayer, who I've worked with. I've been lucky that I've been able to work with really great people that understand this world and understand the sensibilities. And I've ran into executives that didn't, or were too into that whole LA thing, the whole way of being of LA and how things are supposed to develop, and just kind of assuming what you think the audience wants to see, but just being out of touch, So that's for me where I've ran into, like, just I bang my head against the wall and I'm like, oh my God, how is this still happening in 2020? How is it still like the Latinos? And like, when they say that term, you're like, okay, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
You just put us in a box, the Latinos,
Right. And look, I think a lot of it also comes down to culture. Obviously LA, when you're pitching at a network or a studio there's a specific culture on the West Coast that maybe is a little different than the culture and how we kind of grew up here in Miami. And so, in terms of getting back to storytelling and production, and a lot of it is probably still driven on incentives, but the ability to have a local creator telling a local story for a universal audience, which has been a little bit hindered here because of our lack of incentives. How important is that in terms of the material you're developing to eventually be able to shoot parts of the corporation in Miami or some of the other stories you're developing, as opposed to a network saying, well, we love it, but you're going to have to shoot it in Georgia, or you're going to have to go here or there in order for us to make the numbers work?
I'm not there yet in the sense that at that higher level, like as far as production, I have like a documentary series that we're close to getting ready to shoot here in Miami, so that's not as affected. But these big scripted things that I'm working at, we're not there yet where we're talking about like where we're going to shoot them. And to be frank, and any filmmaker that's, hustling to get their projects made, if the studio says we're shooting here, we're shooting it there. It's
Right.
just what it comes down to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to not make the film or the TV show because I can't shoot it in Miami. Unfortunately, that's just, nobody would. Now,
Right.
am I going to fight tooth and nail to get it done? For sure. And a lot of the stuff that I'm doing are period pieces that it would probably behoove you to shoot them in Miami for creative reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel pretty strong about a lot of like my location centric projects that you would shoot it in Miami because it makes sense. Because
Right.
like, yeah, you're going to save X on the incentive, but you're going to spend this much more to do certain things. As long as I have a say in it, I'm always going to want to shoot in the city. But if I don't, then that's just the way it is.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know how
No.
I feel about incentives. I wish they didn't exist. I
Yeah.
think they're not advantageous to anyone.
Right. No. No. You're totally right. And I think the one interesting thing, again, just going back to this particular situation, that is that it seems like particularly overseas, right? When you're talking about traveling a celebrity to Romania, to Australia, to some of these other incentive friendly places, is not as attractive now, just because of all the sort of potential dangers involved in moving crew so far away, as opposed to keeping things more local. And so the idea being that if Miami can create an environment where we're safe, we don't have the big incentives, but we can create sort of a system where things are a little safer for the stars, for the directors, for the above the line, then maybe it would be a more attractive thing than traveling overseas.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the whole production landscape is going to change now in the wake of the coronavirus, man. It's a lot of things to think about, and it will change for
Yeah.
sure. It's you don't want to like these multi-country shoots are not gonna happen anymore. At least for
No.
now, they're
Right.
not.
Right.
They're just not gonna happen. Like localized, easy, like shoots that can be achieved are the ones that I hear of getting greenlit. But that's only for now because this is still an unknown kind of deal. We don't. It's so fresh. It's so new. We've only been battling it for 4 months. So
Yeah.
you really don't know where the future is going. And a lot of this opening up is fantastic in the sense that they want to get the economy going. But I hear less and less from Dr. Fauci these days, right? So I mean, do we really know how safe it is? I don't think so. I think it's just people want to get the economy going, and I understand that. If I owned the business and my life depended on it, I would want that business to open up, and I would want to get money flowing again. Um, so I get it, but I also am a little bit cautious about the whole thing.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And obviously, our industry being so particular because, when you are on set, as you know, everyone is kind of sort of in close proximity. And I know there's been a lot of discussion in terms of all these white papers and how you kind of handle the production industry. LA is supposed to officially restart production on June 12th, just a couple days away. But again, the state doesn't really know how to mandate that. So they kind of kick it down to the county level because, at the end of the day, I think it's our own industry that has to sort of monitor ourselves, right? In terms of what we feel is safe.
I mean, yeah, it's going to come down to the film commissioners, right? Like, if they don't feel that you know what you're doing, they shouldn't be issuing you permits. That's for sure. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with Sandy Leiterman and about kind of like what she's expecting from productions in order to, issue permits. And
Right.
yeah, you gotta. It's the responsibility is even greater now. for the producers to make sure that you're creating an environment where, no one's going to get sick, or at least you can reduce the risk as much as possible to spread any sort of infection. Yeah, and you got to get creative. You got to like tier people. You can't have as many people on set at the same time as you used to have. You got to, let wardrobe do their job and get out. You got to let makeup do their job and get out. Like as limited amount of people that need to be on set as possible. And you got to spread everyone out, which means you need more space, which is probably why Florida is a great place to shoot. We have space here.
Right.
Certainly makes places like New York City tougher to shoot because you got to space out a little more.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And then, obviously, I think the one hardest hit that we have right now is our tourism sector, which is sort of our number one economic driver. And that's probably going to take a lot longer to come back even than their own industry. So, I think, like you said, for a certain limited time, you have these sort of amazing locations that are literally just kind of sitting empty, right? That you could potentially take advantage of, at least for the next couple months.
Absolutely. I trust me. I've driven by things that are shut down. Oh my God! If I was like up and running, it'd be so great to shoot in this. Like I've driven by hotels that I'm like, oh man, perfect time to shoot there.
Yeah, it's production city. But yeah, I mean, so just to kind of like wrap things up. So sort of just give me your sort of general take on what you see the future of the industry in general, and for our community in particular, just kind of from your own perspective.
Man, the future, it's hard to say because, I mean, if I told you the immediate future, I would say we're probably headed to another lockdown because of the amount of protests and like that are happening throughout this country that have people all jammed together, not social distancing. So I'm a little concerned, and I think things are going to flare up, and we're probably going to head back to a lockdown. And yeah, not very good news. I'm sorry, I'm not being very optimistic in that sense. So I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the numbers keep declining and we get rid of this thing and it's all great and we're ready to go back to normal. But like, I didn't know that we were ready to open anyways. And then when these protests break out and everyone's so close, that kind of scares me when I see that on TV. It's a lot of people in a very small amount of space when we have this super, pandemic going around. So, I'm hoping for the best. I think eventually we'll figure it out and we'll go back to normal. I just don't know how long it'll take.
Right. No, that's a very good point because, like I said, there's so much unpredictability right now. But I think if there's one industry that's used to unpredictability, it's probably ours, right? The entertainment industry has always kind of, for better or for worse, thrived on a lot of unpredictability.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to evolve, like a couple things that I was working on that kind of happened right when the pandemic happened and it was a godsend was one, something I'm working on in the gaming sector. I'm basically working with a really big time game developer. So, that's something that I was in talks for a long time. And it kind of closed right when the pandemic happened. Now, look, gaming doesn't need production. Gaming is booming right now.
Right.
So gaming will go on. You can make video games without really having to like do an elaborate shoot. It's animation, really.
Right.
Podcast. I'm in the middle of closing a really, really big podcast with a really big company on a big subject. It's one of those things that'll be announced pretty soon, and you'll see. It's a I almost cussed. Sorry about that. It's a really, really big podcast, and that was kind of in the works before the pandemic happened. And it's kind of like I'm looking at it, and I'm like, whoa. So where's the money coming from right now? Video games and podcasts.
Right.
Who would have thought that that's kind of what's flowing right now in that sense, in this sense of like two industries that are booming right now. They're having their moment. And they don't involve shooting or production or anything. They're going to keep on going. So I think as a producer or director or whatever, it's all storytelling, really. It's the same thing. So, filmmakers, creators, story writers evolve. Think of other ways to use what you're good at if you can't actually step on a set at the moment.
Yeah, no, you're right, and very similar to that, animation. We had a guest recently from Netflix who's an animation producer there now, and she says the animation world is just full on. Like they haven't slowed down one iota, because again, it's something you can produce remotely. And I'm wondering, in terms of the future of this industry, and something I've been reading a lot on, is kind of like this sort of hybrid of live action, CGI, and animation. Kind of like digitally inserting actors into scenes in order to create that sort of safety, but just kind of incorporating more technology into even to our live action productions.
Dude, these video games, they look so real that I'm fairly certain we can make movies that look like The Irishman, and probably generate it with like a lot of technology.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if
I
you saw
mean,
this. CA recently signed their first influencer. She's like a digital CGI girl on Instagram, and now she's a CAA client, and she's a completely digital creation. And I've seen some of the footage. It looks very realistic.
yeah, man. The whole, I mean, look, it takes the fun out of it because I do like movies that, are shot and, cinematography. I mean, I don't know, then. That's an interesting, like, real 30 years from now question. What if you can make a movie like The Irishman and you could just make it the same way you make an animated film and you don't have to shoot anything? And all the acting can be done on a stage, and the cinematography and the makeup and everything can just be done on a computer, and it looks just like the real one. So what's the idea there? Why would you need to step on a set and do anything? Why can't it just be made in a studio? I mean, that's a whole far down the road future question, and it would put all
Right.
of us out of business. But I'm just saying, if the technology is possible, I don't know, something to think about.
No, you're right. But at the end of the day, I think you mentioned before, it's all storytelling, right? Like we're storytellers. So whatever the paintbrush they give us, we're going to design those stories and we're going to develop those characters. And I think whether an actor is on a green screen or on a real set, I think the idea of human performance, human interaction is still going to exist on some level, just depending on what the possibilities are.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, a lot of possibilities here, and obviously, JD, as you know, last week was supposed to be the 10th anniversary of our conference, and we weren't able to have it, due to the circumstances. But we've been kind of bringing back some of our favorite guests from previous editions, and you're by far, one of the top favorites. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do
Oh,
this
dude,
today.
thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I always love doing anything with you guys.
Likewise. All right, I'm going to put you on standby 1 second. Just sign off, and I'll bring you right back just to say goodbye. Give me 1 second.
All right, for sure.
All right, so that was our friend, our good colleague, an amazing producer, director, writer, filmmaker, JD Freitas, Jose Daniel Freitas. He's an amazing, amazing talent right here from our community that's been doing things not only locally in Hollywood and all around the world. And we expect really big things from him in the future as well, with all the amazing hard work that he's doing consistently and always representing our community, the 305, the Latino community, the Cuban American community. So we're so proud and honored to have JD Jose Daniel as our guest today. And again, on behalf of Camacol, the Miami Media and Film Market, I am your host, JL Martinez. And until the next